A simple way to know if your lower chakras are balanced or not is to pay attention to how you think. Now, I'm going to play a short clip from the movie The Wolf of the Wall Street, and I want you to closely observe this guy. Now, if you were to guess, what kind of thoughts do you think he has on a daily basis? Thoughts of lust? He's thinking about cocaine, so thoughts of addiction. He's thinking about money, so thoughts of greed. He has a big ego. And of course, he's self-obsessed and self-serving. And part of the reason it's easy to guess his everyday thoughts simply from observing his behaviors. And that's the thing. Your thoughts and behaviors go hand in hand. And both in turn shape your personality. You know, in the chakra framework, the lower 3 chakras form your personality, also called your ego. And so, how you think, your behavior, your personality, the workings of the lower chakras and ego, they are all intimately connected. If your predominant thinking is negative, so is your behavior. Chances are your lower chakras are either overactive or they are blocked, and you're likely to have a big or toxic ego. Conversely, positive thoughts feed into positive behaviors. If you have balanced your lower chakras, you're likely to have a healthy ego. And so with this introduction as a backdrop, the intention in this video and what you will learn is, number 1, the root cause of your negative thoughts, why you get stuck in them, and most importantly, how to heal them at their source of causation. Now, the mind matrices connected with the lower chakras are the subconscious mind, the instinctual mind, and the conscious mind. And together they dictate the quality of your thoughts, your thinking. Now, of the 3 mind matrices, we only are somewhat aware of the third layer, or the conscious mind. That's because we live in the third dimension. And to gain awareness of the other 2 matrices, you will need to develop self-awareness. You know, when you learn to go within, you start to become aware of how you think. You also become acutely aware of your addictions. Like when I started meditating, I saw firsthand that every single time I felt fear, I would dash towards the fridge, and overeating was my way of managing my feelings. Your choice of addiction could be something different. And the billion-dollar question that we should all be asking is, why the addictions? Why we struggle with fear, shame, guilt, and other negative thoughts. Dr. Gabor Mate, who is a world-renowned expert on addiction, says that addiction is a response to emotional pain. I would go a step further and proclaim that negative thoughts are a response to emotional pain. And the emotional pain that I am talking about is the pain stored in the mind matrices of chakra 1 and 2, of which we have zero awareness. Now, this emotional pain can stem from having experienced abuse or trauma at a physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual level. It can come from heartbreak, from bad things happening and good things not happening. Emotional pain can also stem from all the issues connected with the second chakra. That's relationships, emotions, intimacy, childhood pain and trauma. And then there are issues connected with the base desires. This has everything to do with sex and sexual energy, including themes of porn, strip clubs, and even sex hookup websites. You know, when a person abuses their sexual energy, it adds to emotional pain and disconnection for all the parties involved. And so, when you are blinded to your emotional pain, you don't know what your emotional wounds are. You get stuck in your negative thoughts. Now, the most common route that most people take to cope with their negative thoughts is by trying to think positive. They'll go out of their way to be generous, or they'll double down on discipline, Or maybe you try to be kind to a stranger, or you hope that maybe you can be more patient with your kids. And while all these are admirable acts, they only last so long. They only offer temporary relief because you are addressing the core issues at only the surface level. Now, for the ease of understanding, let's add two visuals, one for positive thinking and another one for negative. Like we discussed earlier, collectively these three mind matrices form your ego. And again, to differentiate, let's label this side as the toxic, negative, or unhealthy ego because it keeps you stuck in negative thinking. And let's label the second side as the non-toxic or positive or healthy ego. You know, when people talk about a person having a big ego or a bloated ego, this is what they are referring to. And simply jumping from thinking negative to thinking positive doesn't work. You're bound to fail eventually because this path is not sustainable. The path we all need to take to heal our negative thoughts is this. This is the path of hero's journey where you deep dive into your psyche. Now, most people will tell you, hey, you need to tame your ego, or you need to keep your ego in check, and they will give you all sorts of suggestions like humble yourself, don't brag about your success, or learn to put others first, and the like. And I hope by now you can see why these suggestions don't work in the long run. Now, for the majority of us, there's a total blackout on the content stored here. And what's left is this. And if you don't get a handle on your negative thoughts, then over time, they become permanent fixtures in your psyche. It's like the house guest that never leaves and believes that your house is their house. In other words, once these negative thoughts become solidified in your psyche, then they become the undercurrent of how you think. They will attract negative spirits to your psyche and your aura. And then it becomes even more challenging to change your mindset. Now, just as a side note, do you remember the tuning fork experiment from your science class? If not, here's a quick recap. In this experiment, a vibrating tuning fork makes sound, just like so. And when you bring this vibrating tuning fork close to other things like water, it's going to cause them to vibrate with the same frequency, like so. Using this analogy, when your predominant thinking is negative, then that's what you're going to attract and magnetize towards yourself. Imagine all these negative thoughts forming their own tiny houses in your psyche. And these dwellings, plus your emotional pain, together they form the realm of predator, meaning your default way of thinking is like a predator. Someone who preys on the weak and the vulnerable. As an example, people who engage in domestic violence or child abuse. That's an extreme case of a predator mind. But in everyday life, you can still come across people who act or think like a predator, like narcissistic bosses or co-workers, or even family members. People who think and act like an egotist. And the modus operandi of the predator mind is, I'm superior to everyone else. And so it plays out the superiority complex of the polarity and will project inferiority on others. Now, unless you're really devoted to self-mastery, to personal growth and development, chances are you're unaware of any of this. And so you have all this inner pain and disconnection, and all of it leads you to have untrustworthy behaviors. This could be lying, cheating, gaslighting, having lack of empathy for yourself or others, acting entitled, or exploiting others and not respecting their boundaries, all of which further mires you in negative thinking and mindset. Now, I've shared a lot of information. Let's do a quick recap. Say you have a boss like Miranda Priestley from the movie The Devil Wears Prada. Here's a tiny glimpse into her life. Now, simply by observing her, you can discern that this is someone who embodies the superiority complex, which stems from the predator mind. In other words, we are looking at the toxic or unhealthy ego in action. And when a person has toxic or unhealthy ego, they are bound to struggle with negative thinking. Why? Because they haven't addressed their emotional pain. Now, with what we have discussed as a baseline, let's talk about practical steps you can take to transmute your unhealthy ego. As a first step, identify superior and inferior thinking in your daily interactions. If it helps, make a list of your thoughts and identify and classify them as inferior thoughts, superior thoughts, love or fear thoughts. Superior thinking is usually intolerance, impatience, arrogance, manipulation, attack, anger, and judgmental thinking. And on the contrary, inferior thinking encompasses worry, lack of self-love, low self-esteem, jealousy, guilt, hurt, fear, attachment, and martyrdom. And really take a moment to reflect and contemplate on how are these thoughts serving you. And the best antidote you can offer the superiority mindset or inferiority complex is emotional and psychological centering. That is intentionally choosing thoughts and behaviors that help you become grounded and centered at a spiritual level. The second suggestion is addressing any repressed emotional pain. That's fundamental to changing your mindset and also for healing lower chakras. Another suggestion is contemplating on the positive polarity thoughts, as in really taking time to ask yourself, okay, what would it be like if I were to embrace, say, thoughts of purity, generosity, patience, kindness, diligence, humility in my everyday life? Because sometimes contemplation alone can nudge you to think and act differently. This inner work is possible only when you learn to quiet down your busy mind. And so if it feels in resonance, consider creating a daily meditation practice. Like one of my meditation teachers often reminds us that anytime we get angry or we are being judgmental, that's a sign of toxic ego. It simply means there's more work to be done in chakra 1, 2, and 3. And in the shadow work, what we are really learning is to observe, discern, and acknowledge our emotional wounds. Because once you can see from where the pain is stemming from, then that thing loses its charge. It doesn't trigger you the same way. And I would be remiss if I didn't share that inner work is a slow process. Transmuting your negative ego, it does take time, effort, patience, and devotion. And so you've got to be kind and gentle with yourself. Healing your lower chakras is no different than preparing for a marathon. It's highly unlikely you can run 26 miles overnight. It just doesn't happen. In my own healing journey, I struggled quite a bit with negative thoughts. And I couldn't comprehend why, despite spending hours meditating, I still couldn't get a handle on my thinking. Why would I recreate same emotional themes with different people? That is until I came across the information I share in this video. I really took it to my heart and I figured I got nothing to lose and I went all in. And thank God I did, because in retrospect, it's one of the best investments I made for my mental and emotional health. And so my intention in creating this video was really that it offers you hope. Because hope is what we need for the most part. Someone to remind you that there is a way out of your mental pain and suffering, provided you put in the work. The roadmap is laid in front of you, and all you need to do is follow through with it. And I sincerely hope that you'll commit to your inner work, and you will commit to reclaiming your body, mind, spirit, and soul. Now, in the description below, I've added a link to a few articles from where I sourced the content for this video. If you would like to research further, I highly suggest checking them out. Also, I've put together a mind map of all the key pointers I share in this video. If you are a visual learner, you are welcome to download it. Again, the link is in the description below. As always, please only take what resonates, discard all the rest. Thank you so much for your time, and I will see you in the next video.